Cinema is an art form that continues to adapt and innovate to provide new and unique experiences for audiences. The combination of compelling storytelling and immersive visuals have kept audiences entertained since the creation of moving images. Since then, cinema further adapted to incorporate additional technical and narrative elements, allowing the use of on-screen verbal dialogue between characters and music to enhance the emotion of a particular scene. However, many filmmakers have pushed the boundaries of filmmaking that have changed the cinematic landscape for the better. Early filmmakers such as Orson Welles invented new ways of enhancing a film's narrative through cinematography and editing that continues to be influential to upcoming filmmakers to this day. But there are a few filmmakers in cinema history who have left a positive stamp on the industry, whose styles have become timeless influences on cinema. Billy Wilder was one of the most successful directors during the Hollywood Golden Era. From 1942 to 1960, Billy Wilder was known as Hollywood's most in-demand director. From his witty dialogue to in-depth character studies, Wilder's work was popular amongst audiences of that time, but his smart self-criticism and social commentaries his films convey are what made him such an influential and revolutionary filmmaker. His films were reflections of society in that era, an example of this being his 1950 classic Sunset Boulevard, portraying the lack of empathy and the ruthlessness of the Hollywood system in the 1940s and 50s, leaving silent stars redundant for a transitional time for cinema, and showing a screenplay writer struggling to find a job, and a former silent movie star in a dangerous state of denial, as she refused to believe that her best days as a famous actress are behind her. For what many saw as the golden era for Hollywood, Wilder's Sunset Boulevard offered a different insight into the dark flaws of the industry during that time.
You're Norma Desmond. Used to be in silent pictures, used to be big.
I am big. It's the pictures that got small.
But we believe his finest work is his 1960 Best Picture winner, The Apartment. The Apartment is often seen as one of the greatest films of the romantic comedy genre, whilst offering Billy Wilder's signature dark twist to the story, offering a mixture of light-hearted comedic moments along with moments of suspenseful tension. The dark undertones are also on display. A businessman who is used by his colleagues and boss to get to the top, despite having one of the finest screenplays of its time, featuring various themes, storylines and dialogue. The primary theme of manipulation and toxic workplace culture is very prominent throughout. The Apartment remains a captivating experience, as it perfects its unusual tonal balance to create a film full of many emotions.
I particularly enjoyed The Apartment because of the 1950s industrial work theme. I didn't have an awful lot of prior knowledge of what it would have been like to work in the 1950s, but the depiction of the very male chauvinist view of the world, toxic environment where women were seen as almost lesser people was quite a bit of a shock to me, but I thought that was portrayed really, really well in the film, and I think that was a theme that it almost feels like it was trying to get that theme across, which would suggest that if it was a 1960 film, which I believe it was, then it was miles ahead of its time.
Arguably the most influential director of the 20th century was Alfred Hitchcock. Nicknamed the Master of Suspense, Hitchcock pioneered the modern thriller, incorporating strong themes and imagery into his films, along with his intriguing plots and slick screenplays. Films such as his cat and mouse classic North by Northwest, his suspenseful thriller Rope, and his iconic horror phenomenon Psycho showcases his versatility when it comes to tackling multiple genres. However, we believe his finest works are his captivating masterpiece Rear Window and his psychological surrealist epic Vertigo. Vertigo is his most complex and nuanced release, a dark, twisted psychological mystery classic that features themes of deception, fear and obsession. Whilst accompanied by groundbreaking visuals, this film and his work overall has proven to be a major influence on other acclaimed directors such as Brian De Palma, an influential director in his own right, but has openly stated how Hitchcock was a primary influence on his directional style.
Yeah, I really liked Alfred Hitchcock films. Yeah, I used to like his series, Alfred Hitchcock Presents TV programmes, and you know, the idea of his fantastic way of storytelling, you know, it's always appealed to me, this, you know, storytelling within films. One of my favourite Hitchcock films is Rear Window. And I think in that one with James Stewart in particular, who's always been one of my favourite actors, and obviously his girlfriend in the film, Grace Kelly, as well. And they've got the romantic element there, and the fact that he's got a broken leg, and he has people watching from his rear window, and the fact that he sees all these different types of people. It's great to see all the different types, from the lonely person to the dancer, and then obviously the main protagonist in the film, who seems to be doing things that look very just very obviously intent on doing some very, very bad things, with the knives, etc., and his invalid wife that seems to have gone missing. And again, I think one of the best scenes in the film is when he can't move, obviously James Stewart, and he can't get out of his apartment, but his girlfriend volunteers to go over there, and the fact that she's over there, and then he sees the main protagonist return, that again, the building of suspense within that is fantastic. And obviously the fact that James Stewart is just helpless and he can't do anything to try and help his girlfriend. It's just a great, flawless film, really, and I think one that everyone should watch.
One of cinema's most misunderstood directors, John Carpenter is a household name in many European countries, as his primary style blended 80s Italian giallo horror with his new blend of supernatural slasher horror. Often referred to as the pioneer of the slasher genre, John Carpenter's influence spreads across a wide variety of genres, including horror, science fiction, action, thriller, and even comedy. Classics such as Halloween, Escape from New York, They Live, Assault on Precinct 13, Starman, and Big Trouble in Little China have remained influential Carpenter films to their respective genre. But although Halloween put him on the map as one of horror's greatest directors, his 1982 cosmic horror masterpiece, The Thing, remains his finest and most influential work.
Fire's got the temperature up all over the camp. Won't last long, though. Neither will we.
Another Carpenter release that was misunderstood upon release, receiving mixed reviews from critics due to its extreme levels of gore-based violence and realistic body horror practical effects for its time. The Thing has received a critical re-evaluation in recent years, as it's now seen as being amongst the greatest horror films of all time. Its high-level suspense and paranoid tension makes it a thrilling experience to this day.
John Carpenter, in a lot of ways, is he's kind of seen as somewhat of like an indie filmmaker in a lot of ways. He was very much one of those guys that sort of everyman directors, where he was like he did a bit of everything. He was very hands-on. Obviously, he wrote, he directed, but he also did the score. He was often making films on quite low budgets, under a lot of pressure. Some styles of guerrilla filmmaking even filtered in there as well. So I think, in a lot of ways, John Carpenter could be seen as quite a early indie filmmaker, or like one of the modern crop of indie filmmakers. He sort of was one of the earliest examples of the horror slasher genre. Obviously there'd been examples beforehand. Psycho is often cited as one of the first slashers, but with his film Halloween, he cemented a lot of the tropes that became quite common in that genre. Things like the final girl and the teenage sort of focus, the masked killer. All these things became very sort of, again, weren't exactly original, but were sort of cemented in that film. With The Thing, obviously, aside from the practical effects as well, it's still an incredibly made movie. It's like it holds up to this day. The effects are great and the cast is fantastic. You've got obviously Kurt Russell. You've got people like Keith David's in there, and a bunch of other great character actors at the time as well. And it's just they do it's a really good chamber piece of a group of people stranded in a remote location. Again, if you if you're not making a horror movie, like a remote location is always one of the best things for that, and to sort of, what gets more remote than an Arctic station, you know? So it's like perfectly removed from civilization. You're kind of trapped, and that idea of that exploration of paranoia and not knowing who is who and what is what. I mean, that scene where they're testing the blood.
You tie up Palmer over here. We're gonna draw a little bit of everybody's blood. We're gonna find out who's the thing.
It's one of the best scenes in the film, and again, it's followed by some of the best jump scare in the film as well. That moment where the thing bursts out of the petri dish and things like that. But it's one of those really incredibly cool and tense moments. It's also a really great way of sort of like getting the dynamics of the characters and seeing who is who as well.
Arguably known as the greatest American director of all time, Stanley Kubrick's influence on cinema needs no introduction. His 4-decade filmmaking career is filled to the brim with influential classics. Whether it's his early work such as his anti-war films Paths of Glory to Dr. Strangelove, his thought-provoking dystopian societal commentary A Clockwork Orange, the timeless psychological horror classic The Shining, or often stated as the greatest film of all time, his 1968 science fiction epic 2001 A Space Odyssey. But for this documentary, we will focus on one of his most misunderstood and mesmerising films of his monumental career, his final film, Eyes Wide Shut. One of Kubrick's most thought-provoking films, Eyes Wide Shut's intriguing mystery and ambiguity will forever be discussed. A surrealist late-night odyssey through the city lights, Kubrick manages to portray a lead character in severe conflict, as his superstitions and frustrations are revealed throughout, which lead him to somewhere he doesn't belong, as it comes back to haunt him the following day. When people from that night start to vanish, and the sense of paranoia is present, as the mysterious masked group from the night before follow his every move, Kubrick's final film is a deeply sinister story that has been interpreted in many ways since its release.
A classic one would be Kubrick, purely for the fact of how influential the guy is, you know, and regardless of the fact that he's no longer with us as a director, you know, his films still are so influential and are still so massive now, to a point where no matter how old the films are, they are still being re-released. Not only will he do your science fiction picture or your horror picture, he'll also venture into the sort of, you could argue, film noir. You know, his crime aspect of things with The Killing, which is a fantastic crime film, or equally Fear and Desire. You know, all these films, you know, these varieties incredible. To a point where it's obviously his final film, Eyes Wide Shut, as much as a thriller as it is a weird erotic cult. Which, I mean, if you consider the cast, you know, Tom Cruise, Nicole Kidman, I think it's a very brave career choice for both of them. There was actually one scene from it that I can't ever forget. It's where Tom Cruise goes into the cult club.
But I warn you, if you make any further inquiries, or if you say a single word to anyone about what you have seen, there will be the most dire consequences for you and your family.
It's mesmerising in the sense of it's kind of horrific, but this is all the norm, and it's all the way it's done, as if to say it's not wrong. But yeah, Eyes Wide Shut is an experience.
One of modern cinema's biggest names, Quentin Tarantino is a director who has made a name for himself in a fairly short tenure. Having 10 films as of 2024, Tarantino's work strives for quality over quantity, attracting many audiences to his distinctive style. Known for incorporating the use of niche to popular music in his films, his soundtracks have become as big pop culture hits as some of his films, as well as his naturalistic but witty dialogue. But his over-the-top violent style was a huge shock for audiences in the 90s, as his first film, Reservoir Dogs, sparked controversy amongst the public. Since then, Tarantino's work has always been the victim of linking real-life violence to violence in films, but Tarantino has refused to change his unique style despite some criticism. This style has led to all-time classics such as Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown, Kill Bill, Django Unchained, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, or what we consider to be his best film, his 2009 fictionalized World War II film, Inglourious Basterds. Inglourious Basterds perfectly balances his occasional dark-humoured tone to create scenes of gripping intensity. A major standout in this film is Christoph Waltz's portrayal as the antagonist Hans Lander, an unpredictable and cunning character elevated by Waltz's exceptional performance.
I feel like the first scene in Inglourious Basterds is like the best version of that, where you don't really know, from the first like few minutes, you don't really know if he knows, if Christoph Waltz's character is aware that they're hidden under the house or the floorboards and the milk, and then you think he's going to leave and he doesn't leave. It's just, it's so tense, it's really tense. The dialogue, unbelievable. The way he speaks in, I think, more than 3 languages in that film, it's just crazy. And then just the tenseness of the other guy in the house just like shaking, and he keeps like accidentally breaking out speaking French because he's nervous and he's French and it's his actual accent or his language. I think the comedy in Tarantino is underrated. I think Brad Pitt's character gives a lot of relief in that, just to give you that laugh in such a film, like a film that you'd think is so serious and about such a serious topic. The comedy's perfect. I think his first few films, and that film obviously, I think they're just standout films. I think you just know it's a Tarantino film, especially when it shows like the characters, like Hugo Stiglitz, where it just does his name, and then it like plays music and then a little bit of a background story. It's almost like a comic book.
3 Gläser.
I love the bar scene with Michael Fassbender. It's just the little details that you miss with the 3. That's like an iconic moment.
You know something, you Rich? I think this just might be my masterpiece.
Most likely the director of your childhood favourite film. Steven Spielberg is a director who has made a wide array of all-time classics. From adventure films like Raiders of the Lost Ark to gut-wrenching war films such as Schindler's List, Spielberg's filmography is probably the most well-known out there. Along with composer John Williams, Spielberg has managed to create timeless family classics full of imagination and filmmaking magic. Often credited as the pioneer of the summer blockbuster, Spielberg has had experience with working with many film budgets like his first film, the TV movie Duel, up to blockbusters like Jurassic Park. But arguably, Spielberg's most influential and iconic release is the film that created the term blockbuster, his 1975 horror thriller epic Jaws. Jaws is one of the most popular films of all time, a monster picture that became synonymous with the sea. Implementing Hitchcockian suspense techniques along with highly thrilling action sequences. Combine that with John Williams' all-time iconic score, and you've got cinema's greatest summer blockbuster.
Jaws is an absolute classic, one of my all-time favourite films. Still remember being absolutely petrified by it as a kid, in particular the scene when the head comes out of the boat. Even that, I've probably watched the Jaws 20-30 times now. Every single time the head comes out of the boat, I still jump, even though I know it's about to happen. But the characters, the way that the characters are cast is fantastic in that film. From the smarmy mayor who's trying to keep the beach open despite the fact that people are in danger of dying. The fisherman that has been there, seen it, done it, and well, rather than bought the t-shirt, got the teeth.
Jaws was it was the first film I actually saw at the cinema. I thought the brilliance of the different characters, the interaction between the 3 main characters in it, from Brody to the other 2, Robert Shaw and Richard Dreyfuss as characters again, was fantastic.